Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 669, 669, January the 20th, 2019, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, Trump gave his speech today on border security, the border crisis and the government shutdown. And of course, he did what most of us expected he would do. He made an offer. He made a negotiated offer to Pelosi and Schumer and the Democrats. And I don't think there was any doubt in Trump's mind that Pelosi and Schumer were going to reject that. In fact, Pelosi actually and some Democrats obviously got some leak as to what he was going to say. And even before he gave this speech or address or what have you, they came out and debunked it, or basically said no. No, is basically what they said. No, not interested. And I don't think this was any surprise to Trump. He fully expected them. They're locked in. Pelosi and Schumer, they're locked into the resistance. They think this is a winning strategy for 2020, and that's what this is all about. It's 2020. And they believe if they can just beat no, and resist from now until the 2020 elections, that their base will love them and come out and vote for them in big numbers. It's about getting out the vote for them in 2020, and they believe the best way to do that is to be the resistance. Now, I believe, obviously Trump believes, many Republicans and many people commenting on this believe this is a miscalculation on the part of Pelosi and Schumer. And the reason this is probably a miscalculation is because you have these freshman Democrats. We have about 50 or so freshman Democrats who are either in red states or in swing states. We also have other Democrats who are in border states or are in red states or swing states, where they know that this issue, particularly in the Midwest, is a popular issue with the voters. It's in the top 3 issues. And most reasonable people agree that we have to secure the border. And so every day that this goes on, Trump and Republicans, and I believe correctly, believe that they are going to win this fight. Now, the target here for Trump was not Pelosi and Schumer. He knows they're already locked in. They can't possibly back down, or they would look weak, and they would probably be forced to resign or step back from their leadership positions. It's not something that they can do politically. It's politically impossible for Pelosi and Schumer to backstep. They're too far. They've dug in too deep, and there's no way out for them. So Trump's pitch was not to Pelosi and Schumer. In fact, it wasn't a pitch to them at all. What this was is part of the ongoing media operations by Trump and his team to win the debate. And you win the debate by doing exactly what he's doing. Now, today he comes out and he makes what sounds like a fair offer. That offer would include $800 million in humanitarian assistance, $805 million in new drug detection technology, 2,750 border agents, 75 new immigration judges, $5.7 billion for physical barrier, a wall, 3 years of legal relief from deportation for DACA recipients, 3 years of extensions of protections for immigrants under the temporary protected status. And of course, he said this is not a permanent fix, it's only a down payment. So he's made a fair offer, and he's essentially put the ball into Pelosi's court. And she said, before he even made the speech, no. Okay, so again, this is not directed at Pelosi and Schumer. They're already locked in. He knows that they can't back off. He is targeting these 50 or so freshman Democrats who just won their elections, who are in swing states or red states, where the pressure will be brought to bear on them. He's also got Republicans in both the House and the Senate working on those Democrats because they understand their reality. They also understand that Pelosi and Schumer don't give a damn about them and whether or not they hold on to their seat or lose their seat or anything else. This is totally about the egos of Pelosi and Schumer and their political strategy for 2020. And these freshman Democrats and other Democrats in states where there's some risk by opposing some sort of immigration or border security, these are the people who are being targeted. Because what will eventually happen that will break this, if Trump and the Republicans can hold their position long enough, and as long as they see that they're at least ways holding steady in approval, and actually they're doing better than that, because we can see that since the shutdown occurred, Trump has gained 19 points of approval with the Hispanic voters, 19%. So he understands that a lot of Hispanics who come here and start businesses, roofing businesses, landscaping business, cleaning businesses, all these service businesses, these hardworking Hispanics who've come here and done it correctly, they are generally conservative, and they understand exactly this issue, and they understand that they came here illegally, they did it the right way, they're going through the legal process, and they are the ones, just like a lot of people in the minority community, who are being undercut. These people understand the reality of the issue on the ground, where it affects them personally. Trump understands this, and the polls back it up. So the end game here is that as this goes on and on, you will find eventually enough of those freshman Democrats, Democrats in swing states, Democrats in red states, Democrats in border states, in both the House and the Senate, who will realize that this is going to cost them. For these freshman Democrats, this is their very first big vote. This is the very first big action since they were elected. And they know an issue like this, as toxic as it is, and an issue that is going to be a major player in 2020, and an issue that will be used against them by their opponent in just less than 2 years. They can't afford to drop the ball here. They have to at least ways appear to be reasonable, which Pelosi and Schumer are not. So this was an excellent move by Trump, because he put the ball in Pelosi's court, and now it is Pelosi saying no to the DACA people, because Trump is definitely throwing some stuff out there to benefit them. He's moving in their direction. He gave them something, and they flatly rejected it. And so the ball is now in Pelosi's court, and no is not a realistic response in a negotiation. Just flat no, especially when the person has just given you some of the things that you want. So the pressure that's being brought to bear is not meant to bring it on Pelosi and Schumer. As I said, they're dug in. They have no fear. They're not worried about losing their seats. They'll be there until they die, or until they choose to leave, or what have you. Pelosi and Schumer are totally safe. They're not facing any challenge. But these other Democrats in the House and Senate are facing potential challenges, certainly challenges in 2020, from an opponent who's going to use this issue to beat them senseless. So the strategy, I believe, that the Republicans and Trump are playing here is that they know that they have all these vulnerable Democrats in the House, at least 50 of them or more, probably at least 10 of them in the Senate. So they are going to continue this, because these are the people who are going to decide this, how this goes. And it's just a matter of time of applying the pressure till they cave. Because eventually what's going to happen is these Democrats in the House and probably in the Senate are going to get together for their own little meeting that doesn't include Nancy and Chuck. And they're going to say, look, we're getting slammed here. We're getting killed here. Clearly, Pelosi and Schumer don't care about us. They think this is a good strategy. It may be a good strategy for them, but it's not for us. And we all know that there's nothing wrong with building some damn border wall. We already have a lot of border wall. This is ridiculous. We're going to get hammered in our next election and lose because of this. And Nancy and Chuck don't care. So what we need to do is form a coalition of Democrats who will negotiate with the president or the president's people, and we will supply the votes he needs, so that at some point when Trump has talked to his Republicans and they say, Mr. Trump, we have got the votes. We've got enough Republicans and Democrats to pass this bill with wall funding, the plan that you laid out. We can get the votes in the Senate. We can apply the pressure there. We can get it done. At which point, Trump and the Republicans can then put it to Nancy. Okay, Nancy, we got the votes in the House. All you need to do is bring the bill to the floor for a vote. And then all the pressure will be shifted onto Nancy Pelosi, and then that's the only question she'll be asked day after day after day. Will you bring this bill to the floor for a vote? Will you bring it up for a vote? And she'll be hemmed in totally, because she knows if she says yes and she brings it up for a vote, the bill will pass with enough Democrats and enough Republicans to move the bill to the Senate, where Chucky has no real power. Mitch McConnell runs the Senate. and they will find the vulnerable Democrats over there as well. And the same tactic will be used there. So this is the ultimate end game that I believe is being played out here. It's not to work Nancy and Chuck over to get them to change their tune. They're not going to. It's to apply the pressure to these other Democrats who are vulnerable, who will eventually be the ones who will crack, split away from Nancy and Chuck, and they'll look after their own best interest and the interest of the country, the common sense, realistic thing to do. And that is ultimately how I see this thing going, unless Trump and Republicans just lose patience eventually because they don't see this process happening quick enough, and he does it by executive order, which he does not want to do. So that's how I see this whole thing as it's playing out. And again, if the Republicans stand firm and hold their ground, ultimately the weakest link will be the ones who cave. And this Republicans see this as a winning issue for them. So they're not likely to cave. The people who are most likely the weakest link, who are most likely to cave, will be Democrats in swing districts or red states who are feeling the heat and decide to break away from leadership and to form their own little conference and eventually to all stand together and to come out and make a statement along with some Republicans that they have reached an agreement, and if Nancy will bring it to the floor, they'll have the vote, it will pass the House, and it will move on to the Senate. That's how I see this all going down. Well, yesterday was a disgrace. Day before yesterday, I should say now. It's amazing. The biggest news story, certainly of the day, probably of the week, and probably of the last 2 years since Trump won the election, was the fact that we learned that Bruce Orr began briefing high-level people at the DOJ and the FBI as early as August 2016 to tell them that Steele and the dossier need to be heavily scrutinized, that Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS were working, being paid for by the rotten Reverend Clinton, and that this was political opposition research, and that all this needs to be taken into consideration before counting on any of this information. And so basically we find out that regardless of that, regardless of the warnings that Bruce Orr gave, not just as early as August, but he said he had multiple meetings with these people, as well as his direct dealings with this FBI agent, Joe Pientka, who was relating that information directly back to Strzok and Page, who then shared it with McCabe. This information, regardless of the fact that Bruce Orr told them exactly what this was, that they went ahead and they did not verify it, which they were obligated to do by the FISA court regulations. They took this information to the FISA court, disregarded the Woods process, disregarded what you need to do to send the FISA application to the FISA court. You must verify the things that you say. They did not. And they were told by Bruce Orr that this stuff was opposition research and that you really shouldn't trust Simpson and Steele. This information should be heavily scrutinized. All this information was given to them, yet they went to the FISA court anyway. This was the biggest news story of the day, 2 days ago. But instead, what we got on the fake news lamestream media was this crazy story by BuzzFeed about Trump telling Cohen to lie to Congress, which, as I pointed out yesterday, was ridiculous, and nobody in their right mind should have thought about this for more than 5 minutes and come to the conclusion it was anything other than fake news. So after spending the entire day until about, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, when Mueller's spokesperson was finally forced to come out and make a statement debunking it, then what did they do after missing the biggest story of the day and focusing on a fake news story all day? What did they do the next day, yesterday? They spent the entire day sulking over the fact that the story was fake and that they got duped and basically feeling sorry for themselves. Spent the entire day having a pity party for themselves because they got duped on a fake news story from BuzzFeed, which if they had any sense in their head, any logical critical thinking skills, they never would have got duped in the first place. And if they were a real media organization, they would have verified and checked the story and checked the facts before they ran the story. So that leads me to question this as to exactly what's going on, because this is not the first time this has happened. It's not the first time that a major breaking story about the deep state, about Spygate, major news has come out about Spygate that's not good for them. It's not the first time that a story like that has come out, and instead of talking about that story, some other fake news story pops up out of nowhere and dominates the media cycle for that entire 24, 48 hours. So I'm starting to think that this entire thing may have been a plot, that everybody in the fake news media knew that that was a fake story, but they needed something to suck up all the media energy and get people's minds focused on something over here so that they didn't have time to focus on or even talk about the real news story about the fact that Bruce Orr made it perfectly clear to all those who participated in the fraudulent FISA warrant that they were engaged in some activity that was very, very sketchy, to say at the least. And if they went forward with FISA warrants or investigations based on this information that they were getting, that they were going to be possibly making a big mistake. That was the real story. But instead, we see this fake news story pop up and it dominates the news cycle for 24, 48 hours. It's not the first time this has happened. It certainly makes you question whether or not they knew this story was coming down, or as soon as it came down, they launched the fake BuzzFeed story, knowing good and well it was a fake story, but they knew that they had to talk about something besides Bruce Orr exposing the criminal fraud at the FISA court. So on the second day, after having to come out with egg on their face and have a pity party for themselves because they got duped like a bunch of fools and dupes that they are, they had their panels come on and talk about the impact this was going to have. And you have this left-wing fake news fake lawyer, Jeffrey Toobin, literally sitting on the panel, and he said, quote, that he said, "I'm worried that people are going to think that the media are a bunch of leftist liars over the BuzzFeed fake news story." They're going to start to think that you're a bunch you're worried that people are going to start to think that you're fake news? Jeez, these people are so out of touch with reality. The fact is they live in a bubble where everyone they talk to thinks like they do. They never get outside their studios in New York or Los Angeles or Washington or where have you, and they never really get outside the country and go talk to the people who actually live in the country. Outside their own little echo chamber, they never really get out very much. But, you know, what this tells us is that Trump is right. It is fake news. And every day his point is proven more and more. And it also tells us that this has happened too many times for it simply to be a coincidence. Can't just be a coincidence. Every time a major breaking story about Spygate comes out, we get a simultaneous breaking story of some fake news that ends up blowing up, and the next day or day after, they have to debunk it all day, which is probably still better to them than having to tell the truth about the real news story. But it's only a matter of time, because, again, as I've said before, this story is too big to cover up, and it's drip, 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 drip. But eventually, we are going to hit that point where the wall is going to collapse. The dam is going to break, and it is going to be the flood, and it's all going to come out. And there are those who have a lot of confidence that Barr is going to look into this stuff and investigate this for real and apply equal justice under the law. There is a serious day of reckoning coming for the fake news media. A serious day of reckoning. And it can't happen too soon. Who is Ajit Pai? Agitpai. Who is Ajit Pai? He is the FCC chairman, the Federal Communications Chairman. They are the government organization that issues licenses, broadcast licenses to media organizations. Mr. Pai needs to wake the F up. In case he hasn't noticed, we have a crisis in the country. We have several crises in the country. One of the major crises, though, that affects him is the fact that we now have the media has gotten so bad that it's now become a danger to the republic. He needs to either step down or he needs to act. Congress may even need to act. But the FCC is the one who regulates this industry. I am calling on Mr. Pai to immediately address the situation of fake news. They need to immediately examine the licenses of these fake news media organizations. And those who are in violations should have their licenses suspended. Maybe the first time for 10 days, the second time for a month, the third time for a longer period. I would even consider that he should create a new law. Well, we actually have the license. It's called the entertainment license for entertainment networks that don't meet the standard of news. I would suggest that NBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, all these organizations do not meet the standard of actual news. They are public relations organizations for a political party. And you could even put Fox in that category. I have no problem with that. They should lose their licenses as news organizations. He should sit down and completely reevaluate what the obligations are and the responsibilities are to hold a news broadcasting license. And if you do not meet that standard, you would not be given a news license. You would get an entertainment license. In which case, I also believe that all entertainment networks should have to run a constant scroll underneath their on the TV there, should have to run a scroll saying that they are not a news network and are an entertainment network, and they should have to, at the beginning of the broadcast, inform people that, keep in mind, we are not a news organization, we are an entertainment organization, and we do opinion pieces and propaganda. That's what we do. In other words, we need to lock down on the fake news. There needs to be fines, there needs to be suspensions of licenses, there needs to be a new articulation in the law of what you need to do, the responsibilities and obligations if you hold a news license, for how you must conduct yourself when presenting the news. We need complete overhaul of the laws and licensing for media organizations. Mr. Pai, I'm not sure what he's doing, but he needs to get his finger out of his ass. He needs to wake up and take charge before the fake news media destroys the damn country. Make me FCC chairman. I have a degree in broadcast management. Why not? I'll fix it quickly and decisively. I can assure you of that. Trump is going to meet with Kim Jong-un likely at the end of February. Location not yet announced. What's going on here? Again, a major news story that was not covered at all 2 days ago. This broke the same day that the fake news story from BuzzFeed broke. I didn't hear a single... I don't watch CNN and MSNBC all day, but I haven't seen any coverage of it, and I watch enough of it, the highlights of enough of this stuff to see that they're not talking about these things. But we haven't had much time because there's so much going on. Haven't had much time to talk about it. But essentially what's going on here, everything that's happening with North Korea, really, the negotiations with North Korea are important, but they're not the decision makers here. China is. China has major influence on North Korea. And China has been trying to salt things up a bit, mess things up a bit with Trump and North Korea trying to come to a deal. Because China's unhappy that Trump's slapped tariffs on them and that he's going after them for all the things that they're doing that are not in the best interest of the United States. And that fight's been going on for quite some time. And that's why things kind of hit a lull between us and North Korea. Because Trump eventually realized, wait a minute, we're trying to negotiate with North Korea, but really, the people who are really behind the scenes mucking up the works here is China. So before I can move forward on North Korea, I need to get things straight with China. I need to win the deal with China. And he is just about there. The tariffs are hurting. The Chinese have now capitulated on several fronts. They have now agreed to buy $1 billion in American goods, and they are folding. They are folding. And what that means is this weakening position by China has now finally opened up the door so that they can go to North Korea and actually move forward, because there'll be less pressure now being brought by China on Kim Jong-un so that he can negotiate freely without the Chinese breathing down his neck. So what this shows you is that Trump has leveraged his situation with China to be able to move forward with North Korea. It's very likely that we could see a major foreign policy win for Trump on North Korea before 2020, and we could also simultaneously see a huge win with China on the trade deal, just like we have with Mexico, like we're having with the Europeans, like we have with Mexico, and we'll eventually have with Canada. So just huge wins for Trump that are not even showing up in the fake news. Not even showing up in the fake news. Laura Loomer ambushed the Women's March. She took over the stage, grabbed the microphone and said, "The Women's March does not represent Jewish people." And then as they were dragging her off the stage, she was still on hot mic and she said, "The Women's March is the real Nazis. The Women's March hates Jews." She's quite the activist. I wonder who bankrolls her. I don't know who it is, but I'm glad they're doing it because she makes a lot of noise. And she appears to be on our team, so I guess that's good news. So I don't know about you all, but I'm suffering from a toxic femininity overdose. Toxic femininity overdose. That's what I'm experiencing. Now, more on the Trump State of the Union. As we know, the little stunt that Nancy tried to pull, which backfired big time, could actually create a golden opportunity for Trump. A golden opportunity for Trump. Because now what he can do, I mean, does Trump really want to go look out at the State of the Union and see the entire right side of the audience, all the Democrats, with their back to him, making faces at him, making comments, making snide remarks, giving him scowls? Does he really want to see that? Hell no. Does he want to see them at all? Hell no. What he should do is take advantage of one of various things he can do. The Senate has invited him to go over and address the Senate for the State of the Union. That's certainly one idea. But if I were Trump, I would turn it into a MAGA rally. I would go into one of the big swing states like Pennsylvania or Ohio or Indiana or something like that, maybe Missouri, somewhere like that, Wisconsin, Michigan. I would go into one of those states and do a big MAGA rally, State of the Union. I would address the State of the Union to the people of the Union, because that's who it's all about. They are the boss, after all, not those scumbags in Congress. They work for the people. Trump works for the people. This State of the Union is about the state of the country, essentially. And the message is meant to be not just to the Congress, but to the people. Trump should turn it into a big MAGA rally. Or he could do something really cool. He could maybe go to like a high school and deliver the State of the Union to a high school auditorium. That would be another interesting thing he could do. He has many opportunities, golden opportunities, to take advantage of this opportunity given to him by Madame Botox, who's a complete idiot and a political misfit. She is so badly misplaying everything, it's unbelievable. 2 years from now, I predict that Pelosi is going to go down in flames if she lasts that long. She's taken her party down the tubes, and many of them know it. She's a disaster. There was one funny clip I would highly recommend you take a look at. Chris Matthews. I don't like Chris Matthews on a lot of things, but I'll say one thing. He's kind of an honest liberal. I mean, he believes what he believes. There's a lot of liberals who pretend to be things, and they get on, they say things they know are lies and all that. Matthews isn't really like that. He never has been. I've been watching him for years. He actually tells the truth about what he really believes, much of which I disagree with. But he's a guy who will sit there and lay it out straight. I remember the night of the election when everybody was so bummed out and trying to sympathize or give empathy to one another about Hillary losing. And Matthews was the guy that sat there on election night and said, "Hey, I know why she lost. She deserved to lose. Trump outworked her. He worked his butt off. What did she do? She gave, what, 3 speeches a week, took 2 weeks off to prepare for the debates while Trump was doing 3-4 rallies a day. She didn't go to Wisconsin. She didn't have the time to go. Only went to Pennsylvania once, if any. Trump beat her fair and square. And what was her policy agenda? What did she really stand for? I mean, Matthews was just basically laying it out, and they didn't like hearing that. So he said the same thing yesterday when they had him on the panel talking about the fake BuzzFeed story and also about what Trump did pulling the MAC flight from Pelosi and these Democrats. And regarding the pulling the MAC flight, Chris Matthews said Trump made Pelosi and the Democrats look like fools. Look like fools. He's absolutely right. And you know that because if you saw the little presser that Nancy did, the first one she did right after that, you could see she was thoroughly embarrassed and beat down. I mean, she knew that she got one-upped big time. Fairly obvious that she knew that she messed with the wrong guy. I mean, Trump was the best counterpuncher I've ever seen in my life. He defeated 19 Republicans by being an outstanding counterpuncher, and a lot of them a lot sharper on their toes than Pelosi. And the fact that she's going to match wits with the greatest counterpuncher in the history of American politics when she's playing with half her brain tied behind her back and the other half on, stuffed with filled with Botox and God knows what else, what kind of drugs that's been pumped into her. But she's messing with the wrong guy. That's all I got to say on that. Now, finally, we've been so busy here in the last, it seemed like 2 months with just so much things breaking, kind of gotten away from our weekly segment of Dumbass of the Week, which, of course, a lot of you were big fans of that. And, of course, Peter, one of my very favorite subscribers who's holding down the fort in that liberal mecca up in the great Northeast, had mentioned in the previous comment section on the previous YouTube video that he'd like to see that Dumbass of the Week come back. And I agree. I enjoy the Dumbass of the Week, but I want to start doing it a little bit differently. So from this point forward, what we're going to do is I'm going to do Dumbass of the Week on Sunday because usually Saturday night's kind of a slow news night, and Sunday is kind of a day I have to go back and recap a lot of things from the previous week or fill space a lot of times because there's just not that much breaks on Saturday night. So Sunday is going to be the day that I'm going to announce Dumbass of the Week. But instead of me deciding who Dumbass of the Week is, although I'll get some vote, I'm going to let you guys decide who's going to be the Dumbass of the Week. So what will happen is every Saturday, on the Saturday video, I will remind you, which will be the video I do on Friday night. I'll be reminding you for that Saturday video in the comments section to give your opinion, if you want to give an opinion, on who you think the Dumbass of the Week should be, and a very short brief description of why. And then I'll go back on Saturday night and I'll review those comments, and essentially I'll pick the Dumbass of the Week based on who you guys feel should be the Dumbass of the Week, based on what I read from you in the comments section. So you get to choose the Dumbass of the Week, and I'll tell you who won that battle on Sunday. So Saturday night will be the night that everyone tells me who they think the Dumbass of the Week is. I will remind you, and then on Sunday we'll announce the Dumbass of the Week. So yes, we're bringing back Dumbass of the Week. So you're all good, Peter. Thank you so much for reminding me, bringing that back up. And of course now you all are going to decide who the Dumbass of the Week is. And you'll see what it was like for me. It's very tough some weeks to find Dumbass of the Week. There are so many qualified candidates. So thank you so much. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate, and we'll see what happens next. Bundle up, man. I know a lot of you are getting hit. We're getting hit right now. It rained all morning. It was a cold rain. It was like 33, 34 degrees. Rained all day. Then around 6 o'clock, it turned into like a mix of sleet and snow. Some people had freezing rain. And then here about half an hour ago, it turned into snow. It's going to snow all night. And now I'm here in southern Ohio. So it's going to snow all night. And stop, I guess, tomorrow morning, Sunday, and we're going to end up with 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground. But it's going to be weird because it's going to be a layer of ice, then some snow, then some freezing rain, which essentially is another layer of ice, and then some icy snow, and then some real dry powder snow on top of that, probably 6 to 8 inches. So should be an interesting shoveling experience for me tomorrow. But I know a lot of you up in the Northeast are going to get hit a lot harder than we are here. And of course, we have some strong winds coming in, which could cause a problem with power outages. So hopefully everybody's power stays on, you all stay warm and dry, and you have a very good, safe evening. And hopefully that's what happens, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.